a Sing Street poster.
Yeah, it is. That's the Sing Street and inside Llewyn Davis is there. I was gonna bring
Great
up your
movie.
Evil Dead too. My Evil Dead's in my other room. I bet I have an Army of
Oh, nice.
Darkness
For
thing
the
on my
first
wall in
one.
there. No, I have Army of Darkness on my wall, like a
Nice.
little fan thing of Ash with
Yeah,
the boomstick and everything. But
nice.
hi Rob, how are you?
Yeah, really good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So I have never in my life seen a group of journalists screaming in the way that I did when I went and saw Boogeyman. And
Yeah,
like truly, like a woman was behind me and she happened to sneeze and she sounded like the mimic part of the Boogeyman. And I watched
yeah.
everyone just freak out. They were like, he's in here. Like we're not all adults. But you made a
Yeah.
story we know so terrifying. And it's like incredibly incredible how terrifying it actually is. So,
Thank you.
but for you, what was kind of like your first instinct in a story like this that is so well known? Like everyone knows the boogeyman, everyone is afraid of him,
Yeah.
but like how did
Well,
you
it
kind
was
of
for
want to
me
approach it?
about yeah, for me it was about not trying to reinvent the wheel, but instead trying to take audiences back to that feeling of being a kid, waking up terrified in your dark room and thinking
Hmm.
there's something in your bed. Like everyone's got that terrified little kid inside of them. And I felt like if we could make a movie that was triggering in that way and kind of took this concept, which, has become kind of like a bit eye rolling and neutered after so many bad movies and frankly just it's a bit of a silly title that everyone's grown past, and to be able to kind of force everyone back into that childhood terror again felt like something worth doing. And I remember, the King short story did that to me when I read it far
Hmm.
too young, and that's what I've got. That's my memory associated with it. So I wanted to kind of traumatize everyone else in the same way.
You did. Like I brought my friend with me who is not afraid of scary movies. And she said to me, I've never seen you so scared. And I was like, I was terrified. And then she texted me and was like, I forgot to turn a light on. And then my watch like hit a shoe and I started screaming. Like we both were just scared. But I think it's because like the design of the boogeyman, which I don't know if you've ever seen these videos, but there are these people who do puppetry and then like go up
Oh,
to little kids and they look like these creatures with like four legs. And I came out of the boogeyman and was like, that looks like that's what that reminded me of.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but
I think I've seen those.
yeah, and but little kids love them. I'm like, not me. I was like, that's the boogeyman. It would never. But with this like concept and like having it be about like the trauma that these two girls and their father went through, what was it like working with the actors to kind of like still have that underlying
Mm.
pain that they are going through on top of like, we're terrified of the dark the entire movie.
Yeah. Well, it wanted to. I felt like the best version of this movie was one that felt like it kind of seriously grappled with those issues. It was, it wanted to be a kind of sincere, meaty, dramatic movie about what it feels like to lose someone and how isolating that is. And really,
Mhm.
that was what we were interested in. And that's to us what the creature kind of represents more than just grief and trauma writ large. It's really about the lack of communication between these characters. You've got this character of Lester Billings who comes in and really just wants to be understood. He inadvertently brings this evil into their house, but he's kind of
Mhm.
reaching out to this therapist because this therapist has lost somebody and he's gone through this trauma. And all throughout the movie, these characters, these three family members, just struggle to speak to their own experiences of grief, and instead they just kind of let it fester. And that kind of unspoken darkness breeds this creature, gives life to this creature. And so, it was one of the movies we referenced was Ordinary People, which is a great movie
Mhm.
about people failing to communicate and understand each other and validate each other's experience of grief. And so we wanted it to be the pitch was basically Ordinary People meets Poltergeist. It had to be really scary and fun and 90 minutes, and it was a roller coaster. But when we really, when we attack these scenes of grief and these character scenes, they had to feel meaty and dramatic and weighty. And the first step is you cast incredible actors like our cast. We started with Chris Messina, who's wonderful and has been an actor I've wanted to work with for a long time, who's got this kind of like uncanny ability to ground everything. Even when he's talking about shadow monsters in the closet, he's able to somehow make it feel like Cassavetes, and then Vivian was somebody who, as soon as I first auditioned her, I knew that she was going to be the heart of this movie. Like if I could kind of harness, just a fraction of her personality and get it on screen, the audiences would fall in love with her. And then Sophie is just carries the whole movie on her shoulders and is so she's such a kind of warm, relatable presence, and is able to kind of exist at this extremely high level of emotional turmoil for almost the entire 90 minutes and somehow not have a complete mental breakdown. So she carried the whole thing for us.
Yeah, I call them both my daughters, but like I interviewed Vivian for We Can Be Heroes, and I think at the time she was maybe like, I don't know, like 6 or 7. And it was like one of those interviews where I was like, this child is something else, because she was just like, I want to be a role model. And I was like, and then she
She's
went to
my
be
role
Princess
model.
Leia. And then she went to be Princess Leia, and I'm like obsessed with this child.
Yeah.
But
She's amazing.
she's so good in this. And I think like the scene when she is playing the video game and she's like, if I just keep hitting this button, this thing is not gonna come over here, is so cool, because it is kind of like she has those little kid moments of like hiding under the covers. Because I don't know if I'm not sure how different in age we are, but I remember like the Vine when I was in high school of like this, it was like a serial killer in a movie, but the minute the blanket went over their head, the serial killer was like, oh, I can't get you anymore. It reminded me of like that thinking.
Yeah.
But it's with a care when you have those like the two kind of the teen and then the small child, and you're working with that dynamic of like a teenager who is less likely to believe it but would still be more inclined to, versus a little kid who's instantly like, no, there's a thing in here. What was like kind of your process of mapping out like when Sawyer was going to believe it versus when like Sadie would, and like how they kind of together, and like those beats, especially because it is such a short movie?
I mean, me and Sophie, we sat down the week before we started shooting and just kind of like we went through every single scene and decided like what just the thought process that Sadie was going through with each of these scenes. Like when she kind of she gets this sense, and it's more about just being able to kind of read the her sisters going through this kind of like she's clearly upset in a way that her sister hasn't seen before, and Sadie's kind of like picking up on these signs that the dad is kind of blind to, and it's not necessarily that she believes straight away, but it's just when she's in that therapy session and Sawyer is clearly so traumatized, she's getting those first little inklings that something is wrong, and she's kind of she's able to read into her sister's experience. And with Sawyer, it's kind of like she starts the movie, as most kids do, knowing that there's something that lives in the darkness. As kids we seem to know that, and then we forget it as we grow into adults. And so Sawyer doesn't take much persuading. It's more about her realizing that this thing is dangerous and more present than anything she's imagined in the darkness before. And but she also exists in this world of being a kid and being kind of beholden to the rules and stipulations of her parents, or her father. So when she's kind of repeatedly told, no, it's just in your head, as a kid, you're like, oh well, I guess if the adults are saying it, maybe it is in my head. I'm still going to cling to my moon ball, but I'm not gonna nail the door shut quite yet. And it really takes Sophie believing in her for her to realize that what she feared was really there all along.
Yeah, and I do love like so I Lester in the beginning. Lester is in the short story, but like this is
Mhm.
like kind of they're all new from what I remember. It's been a
Yes.
long time since I read it, but they're all new versus like Lester, this actual story is about. Why the thought process of like I love this family that we are experiencing with,
Yeah.
but why moving away from Lester and his family so dramatically? Was it because we've seen their story and we know that so well that you guys wanted to kind of do something new?
Yeah, I think we wanted to do a straight adaptation of the short story and have that as its own scene because the kind of the shape and the dynamic of that short story is so unique. It is this one conversation which builds into such a place of dread
Mhm.
as Lester Billings kind of tells this story of the creature that may or may not have killed his kids. And we wanted, like I certainly wanted to evoke that same feeling I got reading the short story, that kind of tightening, claustrophobic terror. Um, and but then we wanted also to kind of build on this mythology and also have fun with this creature that you only see described really in the short story until the twist ending.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the Billings character is he's very different from in the short story in our version. He's almost this kind of harbinger of doom who comes and is is a reflection of where this family are ultimately going to be at the end of the movie. He's at the his last tether, reaching out desperately for help or for understanding, and you know we he kind of almost comes as a warning for this family of where they could end up if they don't um, if they don't move through this experience in a different way, and also it felt like to me that the best version of this story, because we're dealing with Stephen King's The Boogeyman, the short story, but it's also
Mhm.
the Boogeyman. It's something that we all know and we all, feared as kids, and whatever word we put to it, it's the same thing. It's the thing that lurks in the darkness when you're scared as a kid. And so we wanted to make a movie that paid um, tribute to King, but also to everyone's childhood fears. It's a movie
Mhm.
that is trying to almost like reclaim the boogeyman, which is quite a silly title and a silly concept, and it's very childish. But if we could make that kind of terrifying again, so I wanted to make sure that this film was focused more around the younger characters and that it was not taking place in the world of adults. I mean, that's a very specific fear to tap into, the fear that you can't protect your kids and that
Mhm.
some tragedy is going to befall them. But it felt like to me, the movie that everyone wants to see and the movie that is going to terrify people the most is one that comes from the perspective of the children who aren't being believed, who know that there's something in the darkness and know that you have to hide under your bed sheets,
Yeah, and
rather,
was
rather than the adult.
yeah, and was like casting or not. I mean, you cast Christmas and he can act the phone book if you ask him to,
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
with having that character in particular be someone who just was like, oh no, but I'm a therapist. Like I know my kid's doing this because this was that so that you guys could have that like he's not a bad dad. He's not disbelieving his children. He's just looking at it from such an adult, real world perspective instead of just
yeah,
like the imagination. Was that like I'm assuming that
yeah.
your thought process from the gate?
I think that's it. He's a person who's he's got a set of tools, that he's used to using to
Mhm.
try and help and figure out the problems of other people. He's not able to turn those tools in on himself, but he's got this very kind of strict rationalist belief system. And I think for him, if he starts to indulge these kind of fantastical ideas that his kids are having, the whole structure of his belief system is going to fall apart. And that's really the only thing that's holding him back from his own grief, is that he's able to rationalize, and he's able to kind of box it away inside of himself in a way that means that he doesn't really have to deal with it. And we like this idea of the therapist who's more able to deal and communicate other people's own trauma and not really able to look at his own. Um, that it felt like there's a kind of there's a kind of defense mechanism in his rationality that stops him from being hurt.
Yeah, and I have one like design question because I'm obsessed with the
Yeah.
two houses that we do see that there are so many like dark turn, like it is a dark house in general, because when we go to the Billings house, it is very dark, which I could be, because the boogeyman is still present there, but like this house has
Yeah,
shown me like the minute it's nighttime and even in the day, there's like dark corners.
yeah, yeah.
With the design of that, was that just always like, did you guys just find a house that was a miracle house and dark? Or was it something that you were like, no, I'm searching specifically for the darkest
Well,
possible house I can find?
we actually, no, I mean that's great that that came across because we actually built those houses. Those were sets that
Awesome.
Jeremy Woodward, our amazing production designer, designed. But I started by storyboarding this whole movie. So I had these kind of like, well, we're gonna play this scene where she's following a noise and she's gonna have to turn a corner, and then there's
Mhm.
gonna have to be stairs leading up to a creepy attic here, and I had these kind of stipulations, and then Jeremy kind of like put that together and built this plan, making that an actuality. And one of the things that we tried to do, and I tried to do in the first half of the movie, especially, is make it so that the audience kind of equated the boogeyman with dark spaces and darkness, and that
Mhm.
really all we were going to be able to see is these like pinprick cat eyes staring out of the dark, which meant that like every time there was these big portions of darkness in the frame, the audience was staring into them and thinking maybe something's going to come out of them, maybe I'm going to see some eyes there, and yeah, it was like I was referencing, there's this movie called The Innocents from the 1960s, which is one of my favorite movies. It's a haunted
Mhm.
house movie, and they just use their widescreen framing so beautifully to have these big, like cavernous areas of darkness. And so I showed that to Jeremy, and he designed it so this house is full of twists and turns and archways and doorways and places that when we see them subconsciously, we imagine that something is going to be lurking there. A doorway is an entrance way for something evil after dark. When you're walking around the house, you're always imagining figures in these dark places.
Yeah, I love it. I truly and honestly, like, I got so scared. I'm not even that religious. I started saying a Hail Mary at one point. Like, I was so scared. My friend laughed at me because I said Mother Mary,
Yeah.
or like Jesus, whatever I said, it was like the Hail Mary. And she was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I thought I was about to die." But like,
Which bit?
well, the first time I started flipping out was right, like the first time the boogeyman goes after Sawyer and like she has the moon ball.
Oh
I
yeah.
had gotten my soda and then like started like freaking out and was like trying to put my soda back so I could cover my face, and it didn't work. And then I think it might have been when they were in the Billings house. I just started like saying the Hail Mary because I was like, I can't be doing this. I'm so afraid of this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But thank you so
I
much
love
for
that.
talking with me. It is genuinely terrifying, and I can't wait for people to get to see it.
Oh, thanks so much. It means a lot.
Of course, have a great one.
Appreciate it. Cheers, you
Bye.
too.